Hello everyone, welcome to another video on French philosophers. Today we're going to be looking at Emmanuel Levinas. I actually had not heard of this philosopher before I made this video and prepared the study, and so I appreciate another chance to learn through you guys about all these different philosophers. Yeah, so let's get right started into this. So Emmanuel Levinas, born in 1906 to 1995, was a French philosopher, and he is best known for his works on his radical redefinition, I think, of philosophy's most significant concerns of ethics over ontology. And I think ontology, in a very clear definition, according to Oxford Languages, is a branch of metaphysics dealing with nature of things. And I think we can also kind of think of them as a kind of a mechanical process as opposed to ethics. And so Levinas kind of argues that our first and most fundamental philosophical question is not about being or knowledge, but first of all, our responsibility to others. And his philosophy challenges kind of traditional metaphysical systems of placing the face-to-face encounter with another person at the center of ethics. And so in another word, instead of seeing ethics, I think, as an abstract system of rules, he argues that it is deeply personal, that it is intimate, and it is an infinite obligation that arises in our direct encounters with other people. And through his work, as we will look, such as totality and infinity and otherwise than being, he explores how ethics is the foundation of all human relationship and precedes any rational or theoretical systems. And so Levinas' philosophy was shaped by his lived experience of war, exile, and the Holocaust, which profoundly impacted his view on dehumanization, responsibility, and the necessity of ethical resistance. His ideas remain highly influential in philosophy, theology, political theory, postmodernism, feminism, and post-colonial studies, all these different fields. And it just offers a new way of thinking about justice, responsibility, and human rights. Okay, let's go into his philosophical context at the time. Levinas developed his ideas during a time of intellectual upheaval shaped by the Second World War, the Holocaust, and again, all these post-World War problems. While many of his contemporaries, as we have seen, like Martin Heidegger, focused on existentialism and phenomenology, Levinas was very unique in that he moved away beyond these existential themes of freedom and absurdity to develop an idea of ethics, of radical responsibility, kind of drawing on from religious ideas. Levinas was deeply influenced by Edmund Husserl, the founder of phenomenology, and Martin Heidegger, who sought to understand being itself, but he rejected both of their focus on ontology, the study of being itself, and argued that ethics must come from a deeper understanding of human beings, a more metaphysical understanding further. While many saw being toward death as the defining feature of human existence, living only to die in a sense, Levinas insisted that ethical responsibility to other people is the most fundamental of all human experiences. And so his works, also engaging in Sartre's existentialism, while emphasizing individual freedom and self-definition, put human relationship and ethical responsibility again at the center of existence. And I think this is also significantly impacted by his understanding as a Jewish prisoner of war during World War II and his reflection on the deeply traumatic Holocaust, right? So and the atrocities that he faced in the 20th century was kind of a proof, I think, that the focus on power, knowledge, and even like self-centered understanding of the world that prevailed in Western philosophy just failed to prevent extreme violence and dehumanization. And so he instead proposed this kind of radical rethinking of ethics and responsibility, and one that began with others rather than self, a very very kind of giving sort of mindset. He argued that our first responsibility over other people should be first, and that true ethics cannot be reduced to a rational system or a social contract by which we say, well, it's really a promise by which we are kept. Our ethics, when we keep other people's, it must be felt as an immediate and kind of infinite as well, because it doesn't end sort of responsibility. Yeah, so his most famous work is Totality and Infinity, written in 1961, and this is one of Levinas's most important works, in which he explores the nature of human relationships and ethical understandings. He presents the key idea that ethics is not about abstract rules or social contracts, but emerges directly from encounters of other people. And so, one of the face-to-face encounter ideas that is central to ethical experiences, according to him, is not just a physical appearance in which you like literally face another person, but it's really a call for responsibility, a presence that demands recognition and care. And one of the famous quotes here is, the face of the face others is the face of God. This means that really in every human face, we encounter something sacred, something beyond ourselves, beyond humanity, which makes an ethical demand for us that cannot be ignored. So it presents more than a physicality, but something about the person's vulnerability and the infinite, immediate demand for justice that must be done to them. So this phase disrupts our self-centered views and perspective and focuses on recognizing the responsibility we have towards other, a kind of divine calling that exceeds human capacities. And yes, so he understands ethics as a fundamental obligation, and that we should think before we think, judge, categorize. Even we are first ethically bound to others, and asymmetrically, ethics is not something that's for mutual benefits. It's an obligation that we have to others. I think, in a sense, it's very, very religious, very austere, right? Even like the giving in Christianity, if they hit you on one side of the cheek, give them the other cheek. I think, and it's even if it's not reciprocated, right? And Western philosophy, from Plato to other recent ones, sought to create total systems of knowledge, but ethics really, I think, disrupts this kind of totality, reminding us that we just cannot grasp the full control of others, and that this is the only primary responsibility that we should focus on. And so Levinas challenges the Western tradition of philosophy, which often tries to categorize and define everything in closed, totalitizing systems. And he just tries to break open ethical systems, calling us to face very unique, irreducible responsibilities we have towards other people. And yeah, this has reshaped, I think, ethical philosophy in a lot of different fields, such as human rights and justice, understanding global responsibility and ethics in politics, for example, in contemporary discussions. We also have postmodernism. We're going to be talking about this a bit later, but it just drew on Levinas's critique of post-traditional metaphysics, and its emphasis of instability. And also, he impacted theology, just thinking of ethics as a infinite responsibility. He kind of, I think, shaped in a lot of ways religious thoughts, even in contemporary society, like with Jewish and Christian theology. Yeah, okay. In Otherwise Than Being, this is another book we have, written in 1974. Levinas deepened his ethical philosophy, I think, we can say, by focusing on language, responsibility, and limits of knowledge. So in a sense, similar to ethics, a bit more nuanced than that. And so let's look at one of the first quotes here. Ethics is first philosophy. This quote, I think, just shows us that before we ask questions about knowledge, about truths, about experiences, we are already in an ethical relationship. And so he argues that we are responsible for others before we define ourselves. So we are foremost in our primary self. We're other serving before we are ourselves, in a way. Very interesting, right? I think this just is very different from the modern kind of self-focus that we have a lot. And so the call of others, I think, he also says, just cannot be reduced into rational categories. And he instead tries to say that it's just infinitely there, it cannot be explained through reason, but is there for each of us to fulfill. And I think it's in a sense goodness for the sake of goodness. And so he also explores how language just fails to capture, in a lot of senses, the ethical responsibility that we have. Traditional philosophy attempts to define concepts clearly and rationally, but ethics just exceeds words, and it is a lived experience, a demand we rather feel instead of understanding. And so through ethics cannot be systematized. It can only be lived and felt in our relationship with others, in the face-to-face encounter with others and with God. Because in a sense, he just really talks to the divine. I think when we're talking about ethics, it's hard to not think about the divine, whether it is the Christian God or something inexplicable in us. There is something beyond us that we must look at. Let's look at contemporary thought. So his work influenced critical theory, feminism, post-colonial studies, political ethics, like we have said. One of the most famous people we have, the famous intellectuals, is Jacques Derrida. Expanding on Levinas' ideas, I think he emphasized the incompleteness of meaning and the limits of rational knowledge. And so he talks of hospitality, of justice, of ethical relationship with others that must be focused on. We also have Judith Butler applying his ideas on feminism and gender theory as well, transcending it into a different idea of vulnerability and responsibility in terms of gender, and just putting it in a different field. We also have ideas on colonialism, racism, dehumanization, and how ethical responsibility must be extended, again reflecting on atrocities, horrid atrocities like the Holocaust, and political philosophies like ideas of asymmetrical responsibilities and neoliberal ideologies that focus on individual rights rather than collective obligations. All lovely. I think it's important to think about Levinas as someone who was profoundly relevant in today's world, not for religious reasons, but where issues like social justice, global inequality, and ethical responsibilities continue to dominate just political discourse. And his ideas challenges us to rethink what it means to be responsible for others, how ethics should shape politics, things like laws and human rights, and how we should respond to the suffering and exclusion in society that we face. And so, unlike philosophers who sought to define what it means to be human, I think Levinas asks, what does it mean to be responsible? He focused on others before self, and his radical rethinking of a lot of different subjects pushes us towards a world where ethics is not just a theory, but it's where it is a way of living for each one of us, one in which we are always responsible for the other. And so that is the message that I present to you with Levinas. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this gave you food for thought, and that you continue to stay curious and open-minded as we continue to progress. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.